Welcome to the MLB slate breakdown. I'm Jason Gilbo at JGilbo11, taking a look at tonight's MLB slate. 15 games, lots of action on the hill. We're looking at big guys like Max Scherzer, Chris Sale, David Price, Clayton Kershaw. So a ton of arms. If you want our pitching breakdown, head on over to the pitcher nail down. We'll go in depth on all those arms today. But obviously, I'll be staying clear of a lot of offenses on this slate. But jumping right into things, 7:05 Phillies and Nationals, a 6.5 over under here in National Park. Not looking for a ton of offense here. Obviously, if anything is coming about, it's likely going to be from the Washington side. Although Max Scherzer has given up a couple earned runs here or there and kind of let us down in certain spots, but overall, this is a game that you're not looking for a ton of offense in. Bryce Harper still GPP play at that price tag against Vincent Velasquez, who's been pretty solid to start the year. But if anyone's getting to him, it's going to be Harper. Daniel Murphy's still a guy worth looking at, but overall, you're staying away from this Phillies side, possibly targeting Scherzer tonight. So really 6.5. I'm not looking for a ton of offense on a full slate here. Next one here, you got 7:07 White Sox and Blue Jays. This one's interesting. Over under of 8. Obviously, Chris Sale, the second best lefty in the game, with Clayton Kershaw being the first. Going up against a Toronto team that hammers left-handed pitching. You have Josh Donaldson, Jose Bautista, Edwin Tulo, all those guys at their price tags. Going up against Sale is not intriguing. But I guess you're looking at DraftKings in their kind of dynamic pricing. It makes it a little bit interesting, but overall, I think this is one you stay away from still. If this was a smaller slate, maybe you can take a run at it. But Donaldson, 4,600, so he's the fourth. I mean, he's the same price as David Wright, pretty cheap there. You're looking at Jose Bautista, who's also cheap as well. So just 4,100 for those guys on DraftKings. FanDuel, it's still pretty priced high. You can kind of fade them there. But if you're looking for Sale to have a blow-up game, which comes about 1 out of 15 times a year, this might be the one. But overall, I still think this is a game you kind of fade on the Toronto side. As far as the White Sox go, they're going up against R.A. Dickey. Going up against a knuckleballer, it's always tough. Just if Dickey's on or not, or if he's off. But overall, I mean, if you're looking at sample sizes, there's not a ton from this White Sox team, but you can still look at Jose Abreu, Frazier, Cabrera, Rollins. They've all had success off the knuckleball. Adam Eaton's another guy up top to consider. I'm expecting a lot of the runs to come from the White Sox side. I think that's why the over-under of 8 is there, and maybe Sale to give up 2 or 3. Overall, I think this game is going to be kind of low scoring in terms of kind of what usually we see at the Rogers Center. But overall, I think the White Sox are the teams to target there. Next game here, we got A's and Tigers. Rich Hill versus Mike Pelfrey, over under of 9. Rich Hill, obviously, is a guy who has shown to continue to miss bats, and that's huge. That's one thing that Detroit does. They have been striking out a ton this season. Overall, but obviously you got Miguel Cabrera, JD Martinez, Victor Martinez, who's hit better from the right side over the last year or two. In play for me, GPP only. Obviously Miguel Cabrera busting out of the slump last night. Now it's kind of priced, I guess, in the median in comparison to other guys. He was in the low 4,000s on DraftKings, 4,500 right now. You can definitely look at him again. I think his ownership is going to be a little bit higher. Just due to the recency bias of him hitting 2 homers for the people that are just chasing that again. But he's in a good spot to do it. Ian Kinsler, if he's in the lineup. So you can look at those guys. Upton as well. He's another name who's hammered left-handed pitching. But overall, Hill has shown the ability to miss some bats. But I think this Tigers offense should be able to get to him tonight. And as far as the A's side of things go, they're going up against Mike Pelfrey. It's one of the favorable matchups. Unfortunately, the A's don't have a ton of pop in that lineup. But if you're looking at Pelfrey, since 2014, is a lot of 369 WOBA to left-handers. That's big. You're kind of looking at a lot of those A's lefties as being possible one-offs and possible value plays. Because they have 4.5 Vegas runs total tonight, and that means Billy Burns, Chris Coghlan, Josh Reddick, Stephen Vogt, all in play for me. all coming from the left side. I think those are your safer options up top. Burns is kind of my favorite guy just because he seems to get on base more than any other A's guy, and he can steal. He provides runs, so he's kind of your safer cash game option. Reddick, obviously, kind of a GPP power guy, vogued as well. Coughlin, a decent value play in cash games, especially with his eligibility at second base on DraftKings. He's an outfielder on FanDuel, but overall, I think they're very solid. They're definitely in play for me. And looking at that game over under of 9, they're expecting plenty of runs from both sides. So that's one game to target tonight, even though it's in Comerica in late April here. There should still be plenty of runs, and you might not have Tyler Collins out there dropping balls and giving the bird to fans and stuff. But overall, it should be a pretty entertaining game anyway. Next one, you got Red Sox and Braves. Matt Whistler on the hill versus David Price. Boston big favorites here. The over-under of 7 looks mediocre as far as just on paper for this game. We're looking for a majority of the runs to come from that Red Sox side with Price facing off against this Atlanta team. Not looking at anyone from the Atlanta side. I will be looking at the Red Sox again. You got Whistler, who's really struggled against lefties. He hasn't figured that out yet. 404 WOBA allowed, 1.86 home runs per 9. Ortiz, I saw yesterday. He sat yesterday, obviously, but John Farrell came out and said that he would likely sit another day. So it looks like he might just get one game in this series at first base. So I don't expect that to be today, although it's unfortunate because this matchup is great for Ortiz. But a guy like Travis Shaw hit 4th yesterday, struggled against T-Ram, but obviously Whistler, different animal. So I think you're looking at him as another value play. I still think Betts up top is one of your top GPP options. He's expensive, but he definitely can pay off those price tags. Jackie Bradley Jr., I know he's hitting down the order, but at that price tag, I don't really care too much the way he's hitting the ball. The matchup sits up well for Whistler. So really looking at him, and Brock Holt's another guy as well. So the lefties all come at the bottom half of the order outside of Shaw, which is disappointing. But they do carry a low price tag, and kind of on the slate where you might be looking for bare minimum guys, you're going to have to take that bottom tier, lineup spot. But I don't mind it with Bradley Jr. at all. Next game here, Reds and Mets. You got Finnegan and Cologne on the hill, over under 7.5. Mets big favorites. Finnegan's an interesting play tonight, actually, as far as GPPs go. Being a lefty against the Mets. I'm not really looking at too many of these Mets guys. Just given that most of them are left-handers. You can look at David Wright. He is a little bit more expensive than I would like. Finnegan, small sample size, has been pretty solid. He's missed some bats. Can struggle with the long ball at times, so I think that's what you're really chasing here. A 1.40 home runs per 9 over the last 57 innings against right-handed batters. So you're kind of chasing the long ball in Citi Field with these Mets bats and these right-handers, so it's not too appealing for me. One guy that's actually an interesting play as far as the left side goes is Lucas Duda, who hit lefties well last year. And you're looking at Finnegan. Obviously, it's a small sample size, 335 WOBA allowed to left-handers with a 1.42 home runs per 9. So actually, Duda becomes kind of a sneaky option tonight. Most are just going to look at the lefty-lefty matchup and kind of fade away, especially on a 15-game slate. But he could be one who kind of makes a difference. And those Mets bats are starting to heat up. So keep an eye on him. As far as the red side of things go, you got Cologne, Mr. Serviceable. Been solid. I mean, not too drastic as far as splits. Right-handers have had average success against them since 2014. 326 WOBA allowed, 1.24 home runs per 9. So overall, lefties he's actually kept at bay, just 303 WOBA. Does have a poor ground ball rate. I think you can look at Jay Bruce and Joey Votto in GPPs, and that's about it. Zach Kozar catches my eye as a cheap shortstop. But outside of that, I'm not expecting a ton of runs from that red side as they become kind of one of the bottom 10 offenses to really target in the league. So look at those Mets names, especially Dude. I think is a great GPP pick for tonight. Next game out, Orioles and Rays, and it's Ubaldo Jimenez versus Jake Odorizzi, 7.5. Tampa Bay small favorites here. Jake Odorizzi is a guy who is prone to giving up the long ball at times. Right-handers have had a little bit of success against him. The trop kind of benefits him, so I'm not expecting a ton of production. But I still think Machado, Chris Davis are guys that are always worthy of GPP targets. Odorizzi, 329 WOBA allowed since 2014 to right-handers, 1.38 home runs per nine. So it is something that you can keep an eye on. Lefties he's been pretty solid against. So overall, I still think Chris Davis, the way he matches right-handing pitching, those ISO numbers, he's still in play for me as far as GPPs go. A little bit cheaper on DraftKings, just sitting at 4,000. So he's got a little bit of a price drop there. Outside of that, looking at the Rays side of things, it's not friendly. You can still look at Logan Forsythe, Evan Longoria, Corey Dickerson, all very cheap. And, Ubaldo Jimenez has been known to be a little bit out of control at times, with 321 WOBA allowed since 2014 to right-handers. Lefties have had a 333 WOBA, so you can put Dickerson, who I think is doing just fine in Tampa. You may think otherwise, but everything points he's going to bounce back here. The power numbers have already been there this season, and Dickerson's price is just way too low for a guy hitting cleanup. I know it's the Trop. I know it's not the best of matchups on a 15-game slate, but it's still one to worth monitoring. Next one here, breaking into the 8:05 games, Yankees or Rangers. This one does have some weather concerns as far as thunderstorms throughout the day, so keep an eye on that. Luis Severino hasn't been great to start the year. AJ Griffin, a very small career sample size for him. Could be a decent arm, but not against this Yankees team. With all their left-handed bats, I think you're going to look at them again tonight. Brett Gardner, if he's in the lineup, I know he's been kind of banged up as well. Jacoby Ellsbury, all in play. Brian McCann, a cheap bat. Teixeira, obviously GPP only. You can look at those guys. Severino, been kind of a reverse splits guy so far during his time in the majors. Has a lot of 342 WOBA to right-handers. With a 2.04 home runs per nine. That kind of puts Adrian Beltre on the map for me, who's hit right-handed bats pretty well. I mean, he's one of the better hitting third basemen in the game. Severino definitely in play. He's been a little bit tougher on lefties, so that kind of makes the stacking thing a little bit hard to do, especially come off a night where you were looking to maybe target some guys against Nathan Eovaldi. Maybe you got that alert that he carried a no-hitter into the 6th or 7th or whatever it was, and you were like, oh, okay, maybe my Ranger stack isn't doing so well. But overall, I still think you can look at this Rangers team as a decent option tonight. Obviously, Vegas expecting a ton of runs there. I think the Yankee side is a little bit more appealing from those left-handed bats against Griffin there, so I think you can target that with full confidence. I just think the weather is the only thing that might keep me away. But obviously, this is early in the day. It's 11:30 Eastern time, so things can change as the day goes on. Next game, you got Brewers and Cubs. Jimmy Nelson versus Kyle Hendricks. Over/under of 8. This game is in Wrigley Field. If you want to look at the larger sample size, Jimmy Nelson's been awful against left-handers in his career, allowing a 366 WOBA with a 1.58 home runs per nine. That's not great going up against a Cubs team where you're looking at Fowler, Hayward, Rizzo, Zobrist, Montero, all left-handed, hitting in this ballpark. The wind's blowing in tonight, so that's something to watch out for. But Rizzo's still an option. Hayward's still an option. Fowler's still an option. Even Brian on that right side, we saw what he can do. We know he can match right-handed pitching. Jimmy Nelson's been pretty solid to start the year so far, but obviously I'm looking at the larger sample size, and the guy has struggled with lefties. I still think the Cubs are definitely stackable tonight and also worth a look in all formats. On the other side of things go, Milwaukee has just a 3-run total. Wind blowing in, not a lot of favorable options. Kyle Hendricks, a serviceable right-hander. He's looked good at times. 317 WOBA allowed. The only guy kind of on my radar for value is Scooter Gennett, 3,800 sitting there at second base. Not a bad option on tonight's slate. He's hitting second. I definitely don't mind him. They keep tempting me with Jonathan Lucroy, at cheap, who's either below 3,500 or right at. I keep getting baited into taking him, but I think I'm going to finally fade tonight. So that might mean that he hits a homer. So if you do, you're welcome, because he won't be in my lineups tonight. But Ryan Braun, he's been the hot hand of late. Absolutely crushing, and he's a guy who I think is definitely worth a look in GPPs tonight. Price not as bad as you'd think for a guy who's hitting 364 to start the season with 5 homers, but 4,400 on DraftKings. He's a little bit pricier on FanDuel, which kind of keeps him away from me. But overall, you're looking at Braun. He's in the same area as a guy like Fowler, Hayward. So Ellsbury's even cheaper. So really, I mean, you're kind of swerving there. I think you'll be fine because I don't think a lot of people are going to be on the Brewers tonight. Next game, you got Indians and Twins in Target Field, 8.5 over under. There could be some weather concerns for this one, but should be fine. I think the rain's tapering off as the day goes on there. You're looking for a lot of offense in this game, obviously coming from that Indians side. Ricky Nolasco, has a lot of 374 WOBA with a 1.24 homers per 9 since 2014. Right-handers hit him well. So overall, I mean, 353 WOBA allowed, 0.96 homers per 9. Nolasco's getting beat up from both sides of the plate. And that's putting everyone in play for me on this Indians side. Obviously Kipnis and Lindor still carry a cheaper price tag. Mike Napoli, a cheap first baseman. The Indians are actually a really cheap stack if you wanted to pair them with two quality arms tonight. You're looking at Carlos Santana, 3,800, Kipnis, 41, Lindor, 37, Napoli, 32. Those are definitely in play for me. If Brantley comes back tonight and hits high in the order, he'd be something to watch. So overall, I think Indians, I know it's not the most favorable park to hit in, but I think a stack here with a guy like Kershaw and another arm or Price and Scherzer or whoever could pay off. And I think that's actually what you're looking for tonight. On the other side of things, you get the Twins. Cody Anderson, kind of your average right-handed arm, has been actually really good against right-handed pitching or right-handed bats since coming into the league. 276 WOBA allowed. Average ground ball rates. Lefties is where he's kind of had his trouble with. 339 WOBA, 1.49 homers per 9. But you're looking at this Twins lineup outside of Joe Mauer, Oswaldo Arcia. Those are the only two lefties, but I still think Dozier, Sano are still worth in play. Eduardo Nunez, a cheap guy leading off. So overall, there are some options on this Twins team. Vegas is expecting them to score some runs at 4.5 tonight. So I think you can definitely look their way. Definitely more so GPPs. There's no way I'll touch them in cash games. So really, I still think the Indians' bats are far more favorable. I think, yes, it looks good for the Twins as far as that 4.5 run total, and I know Cleveland's just at 4, but I'm definitely looking more Cleveland's way. They just have far superior bats and have been a little bit more consistent here to start the season. So next game, you got Coors. Coors was a big letdown last night. Garrett Cole, Jorge De La Rosa on the bump tonight, 10.5 over under. You look at Cole, he doesn't necessarily have any weak spots, but this is Coors. Arenado, not in the obvious spot like he was last night. I think you could definitely look at him in GPPs. I have a hard time paying up for those bats in cash tonight. I think you can fade just because I'm going towards the higher priced arms. There's enough on a 15-game slate to really fade Coors, and there's also some cheaper bats. On the other side, obviously you're going to have Jordy Mercer. Yes, his price has come up, but is facing a lefty leading off. Definitely in play for me. David Freese is another cheap bat who's facing a lefty. Francisco Cervelli behind the plate. If you want to go Sean Rodriguez deep down in the 8-hole, he's worth a look. But outside of that, I think you're kind of looking more so on the Pirate side in this game. Vegas has a 4.5 run total for Colorado, but that is matched by a couple other teams on tonight's slate. So overall, Pirates have the highest run total on the slate. I think you're more looking there with those right-handed bats. You can fit some of them in with the top price pitchers, but I doubt you're getting in McCutchen or Marte unless you're going really stars and scrubs. So I think you can go balance. I actually think you can actually completely fade this game tonight if you wanted to. So there's just enough elsewhere to really look at. Next game here, we're looking at Cardinals and Diamondbacks, and Jaime Garcia, Zach Greinke last night turned it into a hitter's fest. And that could be very well the same thing tonight, more so on the Cardinals side. 8.5 over under, Cardinals small favorites. Carlos Martinez, decent arm here, has struggled with left-handed bats in his career. 339 WOBA allowed. David Peralta in play for me. Still super, super cheap on DraftKings, 3,400, low 3,000s on FanDuel. So definitely in play. Arizona has a 4-run total. Gene Segura is a guy who's red hot. If you want to get in action as a middle infielder, still pretty cheap. But I'm really looking on this Cardinals side, especially with some of those lefties. You saw Matt Holliday slip up and come up hobbling on last night's game, leg cramps. You could see Hazel Baker come in and step in. He would be a cheap guy who steps into the top of the order. You should see Piscotty hit third. Carpenter definitely in play. Matt Adams is a cheap guy to look at. Colton Wong, if he slides up in the order at all. Randall Grichuk. So really, the St. Louis Cardinals can make for an interesting stack tonight. They have a 4.5 run total. And I think their prices can pair well with a Kershaw, with a Price, with some deeper value elsewhere. So that is something to look at for tournaments. I think you can definitely work them in and out of cash as well. So really, the Cardinals are on my team, and then David Peralta is the only real guy I'm looking at from that Diamondback side. Next game here, you got Royals and Angels, 7.5. Jared Weaver, Edinson Volquez. Edinson Volquez, not a guy I'm really going to pick on tonight with any Angels bats. Weaver, on the other hand, you can look at some lefties against him. Obviously, Angels Park is a tough hitter's park, but he's done a 329 WOBA to lefties, 1.36 home runs per 9. He's absolutely thrown out there like 60 miles per hour these days, which could or could not throw someone off. But there's not a big run total here. Both are sitting at 3.5. I don't expect a ton. You can look at Moustakas and Hosmer and GPPs. Alex Gordon's a cheap outfielder. I continue to rely on Alcides Escobar on FanDuel, who just continues to be super cheap for a leadoff shortstop. So he's been completely reliable in cash games. Outside of that, I'm not looking for a lot here. I'm not looking for actually a lot out of these late games anyway, outside of the Dodgers, who are really my only team. Next game here, you're looking at Houston and Seattle, 10-10, over under a 7. Dallas Keuchel on the hill, not looking at the Mariners offense. I know Cruz is there, but overall I think there are far better options on a 15-game slate than attacking Dallas Keuchel, who keeps the ball in the ground, in the yard, and just that ground ball rate is right around 60%. So very solid there. You can look at some of the Houston bats, but I just think Safeco's not the best place to hit. Nate Carnes, 320 WOBA allowed, 2 right-handers with a 1.95 home runs per 9 over the last 2 years. So the only thing that's going up against him is Safeco. I think if this game was a Minute Maid, I'd be all over these Houston hitters. Just at their prices. One guy whose price catches my eye is George Springer. And obviously you can still look at Colby Rasmus, who's on an absolute tear. But Springer catches my eye at 4,200. He's definitely in play for me in all formats, especially if you want to get some exposure to any of the late games. If you're playing the late slate, he's in play. I think Houston's going to be the higher scoring team in this one, although they both sit right around 3.5. So you can tread lightly in this one. As far as the Dodgers and Marlins go, 6.5. Dodgers monster favorite, -310. Marlins will face good old Clayton Kershaw, so obviously you're not picking on any of them. On the other side of things, Tom Kohler is on the hill. Going back to 2014, he's led a 318 WOBA to lefties. You can still definitely look at these bats, Corey Seager, Chase Utley. I'm not sure what's up with Adrian Gonzalez. I know he didn't play. I think it was just a rest day, so he should be fine. Oh, obviously he was facing Wei Yin Chen. But overall, he's a guy who I'll be looking at tonight as a cheap first baseman as well. So once again, you're not expecting a ton of production in this game, but I think you can look at the Dodgers left-handers 1 through 4. They're outside of Turner as a play. And Yasmani Grandal hitting 6 is kind of an interesting value catcher as well. So no one worth mentioning on that Marlins side. Really just look at the Dodgers. Last game of the night, it's kind of another similar issue. You're completely writing off the Padres as far as scoring any runs. James Shields obviously had his struggles against lefties since 2014, more so last year. Has allowed a 340 WOBA, 1.31 home runs per 9. There are some bats here in this, Giants side that hit from the left side. You're obviously looking at Brandon Belt, Brandon Crawford, both very cheap. Joe Panic as well. They're another cheap stack if you're kind of hoping. Maybe in the late game, I think that's what you were kind of looking at, or late slate there. But overall, on a 15-game slate, they don't really fit into my game plan. You can maybe have some one-offs as far as cash games go. Joe Panic kind of stands out if you want to plug him in at second base and feel good about it. He's always a guy who comes up and produces a hit or two with a run or so. So he's a safe cash game guy. Belt more so GPPs. He is very cheap. Crawford as well. They do have the pop in that offense from the left side. But overall, I think these much like last night, these 10 o'clock games are kind of unappealing. Cardinals is where I really stop for offense when you get later into the night. So um, definitely kind of focus on those high totals, at the 7 or 8 games. So that's going to wrap it up with the slate breakdown. Check out dailyfantasycafe.com for all our great tools and content.